I like the 50-50 battle thing because I imagine when the Bruins video team is sort of like tracking wins and losses, players are coming in like, no, what are you talking? I totally won that battle. Like, I come on. I mean,
Yeah.
like, come on. I
That
won that.
or like that wasn't a 50-50. I only had a 30% chance to win that. That's not fair.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat on CLNS Media. My name is Evan Marinofsky, and I am joined by the great Scott McLaughlin. Scott, what is up?
Not much. Thanks for having me, Evan, and thanks for calling me great. There's a first for everything.
Oh yeah, no, you've been called that before. I probably called you that before. It's a good way. It's a good, we're recording this in the morning, so it's a good way to start the day. Getting called great and getting a nice compliment. So I like to. That's how I butter you up before I ask hard hitting questions that catch you off
There we
guard.
go.
So
But before you drag more hot takes out of me like last time I was on.
exactly. I gotta get you, soft and ready to go, and then I hit you and you don't even expect it. But anyway, Wednesday night Bruins lose to the Devils 2-1 in overtime. They get the point out of it. You're missing Zaka, you're missing McAvoy, you're missing Forbert. What were sort of your initial takeaways, thoughts from that game on Wednesday night?
Yeah, I think certainly if you had told the Bruins going in that they were going to hold the Devils to one goal in regulation with McAvoy and Zaka out, you take that every day because that Devils offense is pretty potent, even though, as a team, the Devils haven't quite been up to what people expected of them. They have been scoring. They're fourth in the NHL in offense going in, number one power play. So, defensively, you did the job. Jeremy Swayman was great in net. But offensively, obviously, they only get the one goal. And, you know, I think they created some chances. Vitek Vanacek played well, but they only get the one from Geeky. I thought the second line of Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, and Trent Frederick was pretty quiet for the Bruins. So you got to find a way to get a little bit more there. But overall, I guess you call it a good point, or at least a point that you're content with.
Yeah, I wasn't overly, I didn't leave that game super worried or anything like that. I actually thought Patra had a really good game. A nice kind of bounce back performance. He was used in the third period this time. And in overtime, there was that great sequence. It was shortly before New Jersey scored, but they didn't score on that play when it was Coyle, Lowry, and Patra on the ice. And it was a little bit like a fire drill. There was a lot going on, but I thought Lowry was going to score on that cut to the net. I thought that was going in. It would have been a hell of a statement for him. But I agree. The Marchand Coyle Frederick line left a little to be desired. What I did like though was, again, Morgan Geekie moving into, getting some top six reps, getting top 6 minutes. It's an interesting thing because he obviously scores the goal, but he can be hard to play against, which is something this Bruins team and that Bruins offense kind of needs. I don't think he's a guy that is in the top 6 for good. I don't think he's a number 1 or number 2 center going forward by any means. But I do think that in a replacement level situation, and being a reliable producer, reliably hard to play against, I think you do have something in that sense in Morgan Geekie. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it was worth finding out if he can play up in the lineup in a pinch at the very least. And I think he's showing that he can. He was good the say second half of the game or second 2 periods on Saturday after Zaka went down, and then had really I would say his best game of the season Wednesday against New Jersey. That line with him, Pasternak and DeBrusk was creating chances all night. One of the few kind of lines or groups for the Bruins that was. And interestingly enough, as Geeky scores his goal on with a different line when he's out there with Van Riemsdyk and Heinen. But it was just another great shift from him where he wins multiple puck battles, wins position at the front of the net to collect a rebound off of Van Riemsdyk's shot and buries it. And that's really what when he's been at his best this season, that's what he's doing, is he's winning battles. He's using his size. He's getting inside. He's getting to the net. I think we've seen him around the net front a lot, and only the 3 goals so far, which might be slightly disappointing. It's certainly not any sort of big step up over how much he was producing in Seattle, and I know there had been some hope that there was more offense for him to kind of tap into this season, and for a couple of reasons, like it hasn't quite panned out that way. One is, Patra wins the third line center job, so he shifts to wing. He gets hurt. Danton Heinen kind of passes him on the depth chart. Geeky comes back and he's fourth line right wing, and it's like, well, that's not any bigger of a role than what he had in Seattle. So, probably good for him to move up, get some confidence, put a couple points on the board, and good for the Bruins to know that he can do that.
Yeah, and when he was injured, that Frederick Coyle Van Riemsdyk line formed and has worked and has sort of solidified themselves that when, the Bruins are fully healthy, that's going to be their third line. And or like borderline second line. It's hard to tell some of these times, but you hit it on the head with like left. There was more there. We thought there was more there, but it just hasn't panned out because others have, and that's a good problem for the Bruins to have, by the way. Like Heinen, we'll touch on Heinen in a bit. He's been outstanding. Van Riemsdyk has found a home. Patra winning, as you said, Patra winning a job out of training camp sort of moved Geeky to the wing. It's interesting because I think Geeky has value. Like whether that's, do you want to put him down on the fourth line and potentially have production there? Sure. But I think as we saw sort of on Wednesday night, he can move up into the top 6 and produce. Doesn't mean he's going to be there forever. I don't think he's I don't think if you're going deep in the playoffs, I don't think Morgan Geeky is your second line right wing or your second line center. But I think knowing that you have him, could he potentially be like a Michael Ryder? I don't know. That's kind of a big ask. He's got to make glove saves, which I don't know. Can Geeky make a glove save? I don't. He hasn't proven it yet. But I think overall, there's value in what Morgan Geeky brings, and it sucks that he got injured because he was playing pretty well prior to that injury and sort of finding his place. And then, of course, it kind of just crumbles down. But I think he's sort of working his way back to getting to that level again. Another one I want to touch on is Danton Heinen. Danton Heinen has been everything and more, making like no money. He was kind of like at the beginning of the season, Danton Heinen was like when there would be that like young kid who's on JV or like the freshman team who hangs around the varsity team and just kind of hopes for a spot, like kind of just watches like, oh, maybe I'll get there someday, and then he finally gets there and he shows his worth. What have you thought of Heinen so far this year?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Like even more than you could have hoped for. I think when you bring him in and it seems that he's gonna earn a roster spot, you're hoping for him to be something of a Swiss Army knife. He can move up and down the lineup. He can play either wing. He's never going to look out of place with anyone. And then any production you get on top of that is just kind of a bonus. Well, he's got 10 points in 19 games. And that was, after a little bit of a slow start production-wise when he got in, which was understandable because he hadn't, everyone else was playing games and into the flow of the regular season, and he's just hanging around practicing. So I think you had to expect a little bit of a slow start there. And then he's really picked it up, and he's been a very consistent middle 6 winger for you. And, whether it's been on a line with Patra or with Coyle, like he's moved around a little. He was even up with Zacha, a little bit at one point. And he's produced. He's making good plays. Jim Montgomery, I think last week talked about how they track battles as an internal stat, 50-50 battles, and Heinen grades out really well for them, and you see that, like you see him just winning pucks along the boards and corners, making things happen, and then he's been able to bury a couple chances that he's had. So, for league minimum, basically, like an enormous pleasant surprise, and has provided some much needed offensive depth. You looked at this team and you wondered, all right, you've got Pasternak, you've got Marchand, who else is stepping up? Well, Danton Heinen's been one of those guys. Like he definitely has.
It's funny. Heinen, I like the 50-50 battle thing because I imagine when the Bruins video team is sort of like tracking wins and losses, players are coming in like, no, what are you talking? I totally won that battle. Like, come on. I mean, come on. I won that.
Or like, that wasn't a 50-50. I only had a 30% chance to win that. That's not fair.
Yeah, right? Like, exactly. I came in second. He beat me to the puck. Like, he was ahead of me, skating back for the puck. All that stuff. Heinen, when I was watching the game on Wednesday night, I was reminded that Heinen plays like he's taking advantage of this opportunity. He's not taking it for granted. Like, he plays like someone who had their dream not ripped away from him, but like, didn't have a contract, came in late, all those things. Plays like a guy who is not taking this for granted. And, you mentioned like the 50-50 battles and the 30-70 battles and playing hard, but also like he plays so smart, playing above the puck. There was one play last night or Wednesday night where I think it was Patra. Yeah, he was Patra and JVR and himself, obviously. And there was a play in the neutral zone, and Patra kind of put it the wrong way, and the Devils were coming the other way, and Heinen forced a turnover and started a scoring chance the other way. It's little things like that I think keep him in good graces with the Bruins, and it's good to see a guy like that get rewarded. But Scott, when we talk about getting rewarded, no better place does that than our good friends, our sponsors over at Fanduel.
Score early this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
So it's clear that Heinen has a spot on this team. He's worth it. He brings value. He adds depth. Get 10 points in 19 games. The big one, obviously, everybody compares him with Tyler Bertuzzi. And again, the Moneyball Bruins. That's what they are. Heinen, Van Riemsdyk, Geeky. Look, these are value signings. Instead of just signing one guy and Tyler Bertuzzi. During the quick ad read there, I was kind of mapping out the lines, and it feels like when they're fully healthy, you've got in your top six, Marchand, Zacha, Pasternak, DeBrusk, potentially Patra, and then and then you obviously have Coyle, Frederick, Van Riemsdyk, but then you have guys like Geeky and Heinen who have cases for it and could be up. In a perfect world, is one of those two on a line with, let's say DeBrusk and Patra, and one is lower in the lineup on the fourth line? Or in a perfect world, are they both on the fourth line with Johnny Beecher, let's say? Like, is that going to incentivize them to potentially have to go out and get someone? Or can one of them step in and be part of that top nine full time?
I think one of them can be part of the top nine full time. To me, the conversation about like adding a scorer kind of comes down to, do you need another real impact guy? Like, to me, it's not, do you need someone a little better than Danton Heinen or Morgan Geeky? It's, do you need another true impact player? Obviously, not on Pasternak's level, but, a third guy behind Marchand, say. Like, because I think there's still, like Charlie Coyle's off to, a great start, on pace for a career year. Is that guaranteed to continue? Is Pavel Zacha going to continue to produce at career best rate? Like, those are legitimate questions. Now, I think you would have hoped that third guy was Jake DeBrusk, and it still might be, but it certainly hasn't been yet this year. He's got 11 points in 26 games, and yeah. I think DeBrusk is doing a lot of other good things. Like, I think he's helping the Bruins win, but he's not producing like, a top 3 or 4 forward on a contending team, obviously. So to me, that's where you look at, like, it's not, do you have guys playing over their heads in roles that they can't handle? It's, do you just need another real true impact scorer? Because if you do, then yeah, you can figure out the lines after that from there. And it might be that you end up with both Heinen and Geeky on the fourth line, or maybe one of them stays up and Trent Frederick ends up on the fourth line. Like, there's a few different ways you can go from there, but yeah, I think, if you're the Bruins, like, you're not looking for a third liner. You're looking for like a legitimate top six guy if you're going to add up front.
Well, you already have so many like borderline third liner. You have so many middle six guys that I think, and that's why, like, we're not near the trade deadline yet. It hasn't, come on the horizon, but we can talk about it. I've kind of held steady of like, I don't want to keep giving up future assets. At some point, you've got to make a first round pick, or you've got to find your way into the first round next year and all these different things. But, there's a good chance the Bruins continue at this pace of being the top team in the Atlantic and one of the top teams in the NHL records wise. It's going to be hard to justify at the deadline saying we're standing pat. We're going to stand pat, and we're going to, we're going to stick with Morgan Geekie on the second line, or Danton Heinen on the second line, or, because the Coyle line, I feel like, is like second and third line at time. Like, it's sort of interchangeable. So, we're going to stick with those guys in the top nine, and, they're producing, but when you want like sure bets, I don't know if those are the guys you turn to. They've been good, but I think as the, best team in the Atlantic, a team that still is contending for a Stanley Cup, can you justify going into the playoffs with that? Now, if you come out and say we need to keep our assets, right? We need that's our priority, then okay, that makes it more manageable. And we've said, all along, with Poitras playing, with Lowry up, with Beecher playing, not a bridge year, but it's a year to see what you got out of those young guys. And I think that it's turned into more this year, and that they're actually they might be Stanley Cup contenders. I mean, they're certainly in that position. So it's going to be real hard at the deadline for them to be like, no, we're not doing anything. And it's also going to be tough to give up more assets. Are you giving up a Lysell? Are you giving up another future first, like, for a score? Because I agree with you. If you go out and get a middle six guy, it's like, well, you've got those. Like, you don't need those. If you're going to go in, just, put everything on the table if you're going to do that, to go out and get a top score if you're going to do that. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence about this, but I'm getting more and more convinced that they might need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly have to be the right fit, the right trade. Like,
yes,
last year they gave up 2 first-round picks for 2 rentals, which is not usually Don Sweeney's MO. Like, usually he goes out and gets guys that either he already has like a handshake deal with on an extension, or they're pretty confident they can get something done. Last year was the outlier because that was a kind of once in a generation chance with a team that was that loaded. They can't do that again. They can't be giving up more first round picks for rentals. But if there's a trade out there for someone who you see fitting in long term and you think you can get an extension done with, okay, like that I can live with. I'm okay giving up whether it's another first or maybe one of your top prospects for someone who's going to be part of the team moving forward and like part of your core going forward. But if it's just a rental like that, yeah, that feels a bit reckless. You just can't do that every year. Like you're just going to leave yourself too bare at some point.
I completely agree. Like a Hampus Lindholm type deal. Because again, you're trading a first for someone you would hope to get with that first round pick, or you trade a Lysell or a prospect for someone that you hope that prospect ends up turning into. So I agree. Quickly, before we get into the rest of our show, a quick word from our friends over at HelloFresh. Quick break in the action to tell you about our delicious friends over at HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. A crazy schedule can make it easy to fall back into your dinner time recipe rut, but keep mealtime exciting with over 40 recipes to choose from every week. There's always something delicious to discover with HelloFresh. Turn to HelloFresh Market for yummy add-ons and enjoy the season's limited time fall flavors lineup. It's that time of year, right? Things get you in the mood, like apple cider cake with caramel sauce. All the ingredients come fresh, from the crushed tomatoes to the Italian chicken sausage mix to the Parmesan cheese. It's delicious, and I feel like a chef but I'm doing it. What's better than that? And this is a busy time of year for me with hockey starting up. I don't always have a ton of time, so this recipe makes it quick to enjoy something amazing. So join in on the fun. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Bruins and use code 50Bruins for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/50Bruins and use code 50Bruins for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Now, back to the show. Scott, are you a big HelloFresh guy?
You know, I'm not, but I've definitely thought about it. You know, living on your own, like you are always looking for quick meals, so I certainly see the appeal. I could be convinced. You know, maybe you get me on here and I listen to your fine voice doing these ad reads a little more, and it might be won over.
Might be. Yeah, I love it. I've always been I've been a fan. Because I was getting bored, living on my own with dinner. Like, there's only so many times you can have frozen chicken nuggets, or like, frozen food, or just the same things. I'm like, I don't have any recipes. I don't, I didn't grow up in my parents, my mom made great meals growing up, but she wasn't like a full chef. She's going to listen to this and think I'm dissing her. I'm not, but I don't have any like in recipes in my head of like, great stuff. Cause she always cooked. I didn't, they were great food. It was great food, but I wasn't making it. I was just, she'd go, oh, dinner. And I'd come down. And so I don't have any like recipes in my head. So it's not, and it's also pre-portioned. Cause again, like living on your own, you're not going to, crush a whole thing of lettuce or anything like that. You end up wasting food. So I'm a fan. I like HelloFresh. And my mom's cooking was awesome growing up. It was awesome. I'm not dissing that. I'm just saying that I don't have any recipes up here. So I just want to make that very clear. Don't put
it in the newspaper that Evan criticizes mom's cooking.
Yeah, please don't. Please do not clip that. That's off the record. That's off the, and it's not true, by the way. So, anyways. So we talked, do the Bruins need more firepower up front? It's an interesting thing because as we were talking, I was thinking about, a lot of people want to deal Jake DeBrusk, and there's pros and cons. We've talked about them before. People know them, but I think one thing that's difficult, and you hit on it, was DeBrusk is really on paper the third guy behind, or should be the third guy behind Pastrnak and Marchand, and he hasn't been. And I agree with you. He's been really good away from the puck. He's made plays happen. Like he's playing well. He just isn't producing, which is his main thing. He's got to produce. But do you if you deal DeBrusk, you're missing that potential 30 goal scorer, and I think that's a hard thing for this team to do, right? If this was last year and you had that roster where you've got Bertuzzi and Hall and all these other pieces that are scorers, Bergeron, Krejci, obviously, maybe a DeBrusk thing could make a little more sense, even though trading a good guy off a good roster is never really a great idea. But to me, like, unless DeBrusk is in a package for a proven, like, if somehow the Flames were like, hey, we'll take DeBrusk in a package for like Elias Lindholm, if it's a 1-for-1 or if it's for I would love to deal DeBrusk for a first, if that's even still possible. But how do you justify that on this team with this roster, with these expectations? I don't know if you can anymore.
Yeah, you hit it. Like, you'd have to be part of a package for a clear upgrade, because otherwise you're kind of trading him away at a bit of a low point value-wise, because again, we can highlight all the things he's doing away from the puck and his expected goals for percentage when he's on the ice, which is great. But any team that Don Sweeney's talking to, they're going to look at the points and be like, well, hold on, wait, why are we giving up a premium asset for him? 11 points in 26 games. Like, I don't think so. So yeah, you have to get a better player, because otherwise, like, if you're just trading him away and not really replacing him, or taking on, someone on some other team that's struggling or whatever, then like you haven't gotten better. Now you're just hoping someone else steps up and does what you hope DeBrusk does. So if that's all you're doing, like, you might as well hold on to DeBrusk and hope that his good habits and the other things that he's doing start to translate into more goals and points. at some point. And maybe, I mean, right now he's playing on a line with David Pastrnak, so maybe this is how it happens. Maybe he's a guy who needs to be with great players on a great line in order to really put up points. And right now he's in a good spot, so maybe this is what gets him going.
Maybe. It's interesting as I was watching Wednesday night's game. There are times when I'm like, they do need more firepower up front. Now, that can come from trades, which is the most popular way. But you do have a couple prospects in the pipeline that maybe could be worth a shot. Georgii Merkulov's been producing. Fabian Lysell down in Providence. Both guys in Providence. Do you consider calling one of them up now just to give them a shot, just to see what they've got? Like, are you ready to try that out or not yet?
I don't necessarily hate that idea, but I would say I'm probably not quite there yet. Like I'm fine with letting those guys continue to develop in Providence and continue to produce there because again, like you look at this Bruins lineup and it's not like you don't have enough NHL caliber forwards. You do. There's no one really playing where you're like, wow, that guy doesn't really belong on the ice. It's just, do you have enough real impact scorers? And I don't know if either of those guys is ready to be that yet. So if, do you want to call one of them up to kind of reward them, give them a taste, shake things up just a little? Like, I don't hate that idea. I'm definitely not against it, but I also don't know that if I'm doing it, if I'm hoping that one of them is going to be like the real offensive spark that sort of takes this offense to another level, I think that's probably putting too much on them. So if I were going to call one of them up, it would be more with the understanding of just like, hey, this is just something to kind of shake things up a little and, reward someone who's playing really well and give them their first taste of NHL action.
It's hard to bring like a Fabian Lysell up and be like, all right, you're going to be on the second line. You're going to be with DeBrusk and Zacha, and you are in charge of top six scoring. That's a hard thing to put on a guy, and I don't think he's quite ready for it. The other thing is like with the Merkulov, I think there is offensive upside, but you've got to be willing to accept some defensive inefficiencies. And I don't know if this team is quite there yet where you can have a forward on the ice who is like that. I mean, we saw even with Lowry some issues similar to that where, is the juice worth the squeeze on something like that? And I think with Merkulov, I don't know if it's quite there yet, but I agree. If it's, hey, this is a reward. You've been playing well. Let's see what you are at the NHL level for 5 or 6 games. Awesome. I mean, why not try that out? But if it's like, hey, we're going to bring Lysell up and put him in the top 6 to hope that scoring gets going, I agree. That's a tall ask, and I don't know if you were a middle of the pack team, that would be one thing. You're kind of just hoping for anything to spark you, but you're in first. Like that's not something a team in first I don't think typically does.
Yeah, and with Merkulov, you already have one rookie center that Jim Montgomery has shown he doesn't fully trust in the third period when you have a 1-goal lead. So it's like, how many of those guys can you really have in the lineup at once? And Merkulov you would probably want to keep at center. Like I know he's played a little bit of wing in Providence at times, but he's a center and you would want him to play there. So I almost feel like for him, and obviously you don't hope that this happens, but the pathway would almost be like if something happens to Patra where, he's out of the lineup for a few games, Merkulov seems like a fairly natural replacement for him where it's like, all right, you're going to get that same sort of, there's some offensive upside, there's creativity, and you'll live with some of the holes that he still has defensively. But other than that, it's hard for me to imagine Jim Montgomery playing a lineup that would have both Patra and Merkulov in it just because, he obviously wants guys that he can trust with a lead and trust defensively.
And Beecher, who he trusts, but is still a first year NHLer. So you got Coyle, Merkulov, or Coyle, Patra, Merkulov, Beecher. That's a hell of a lineup. Did make any coach kind of, oh my God, what we got going on here? But yeah, I mean, again, I'm with you on this. If you can want to bring them up just to test things out, sure. But I don't know if that either of them is going to truly spark it. But hey, you never know. Maybe that does it. I don't know. I have a tough time believing it will, but we'll see. We'll have more trade deadline stuff. I don't want to waste too much of the trade deadline talk, because when that time comes in the year, it's like, oh, that's everything. That's all we're talking about. So I don't want to waste too many storylines before that. But anyway, Scott, what can people look forward to from you over at WEEI? And you got the skate pod. What do you got going on?
Yeah, we got skate pod going 3 times a week. Coverage on WEEI.com of every game and plenty of stuff in between. With practices, people can still follow me on X, Twitter at smclaughlin9. So yeah, that's kind of it.
And you're not the race car driver. That's the big one.
Not the race car driver. No.
Was it last time you were on, the graphic for the YouTube video had someone who was not you? I don't remember who it was, but it wasn't you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't remember if that was last time or like the time before, but yeah, it was our Celtics guy, Justin Turpin, who does a great job covering the Celtics for WEEI.com, but is decidedly not me.
Not you, and probably doesn't have the Bruins knowledge that you do, because he's a Celtics guy. I don't have Celtics knowledge at all, so I got a kick out of that. I was like, this dude was on my podcast? Like, who is that? Like, I don't remember Scott looking like that. Who knows? But anyways.
Hey, you know what? Justin's a good-looking guy, though, and he's like 10 years younger than me, so I'll take it.
Oh no, Scott. We want you here. We want you here. We want you showcased on the YouTube thumbnails. And one last thing, my mom's cooking was awesome growing up, and it still kicks ass. I want to make that for the record. I love my mom. So her cooking was amazing. I just want to lay that out there. But anyways, that's been Bruins Beat. That's Scott McLaughlin. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.